Welcome to the Spiritist Companion Podcast. My name is Yuri Castro, and I'll be your companion on this journey where we study, reflect, and put Spiritist teachings into practice. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to subscribe, to tune in every Monday for a new episode, and to send this podcast to someone else as well. And today, my dear friends, we're going to talk about selfishness. Precisely about the battle against selfishness, but not out there, inside ourselves. To begin, I wanted to mention the question 785 from the Spirit's book, a book published back in 1857 by the codifier of Spiritism, Allan Kardec, where he's going to ask the spirits, what is the greatest obstacle to progress? And the spirits are going to reply, pride and selfishness. Here we are. Today we're going to be talking about selfishness. Next week we'll talk about pride. And specifically about how selfishness is at the root of a lot of evil that we see in the world. As a matter of fact, on the question 913, which is in the same book, Allan Kardec is going to ask, of all the vices, which may we regard as the root? And the spirits are going to say, we have already told you many times, selfishness. All evil derives from it. Study all the vices and you will see that selfishness is at the bottom of them all. As much as you may struggle against them, you will never uproot them as long as you have not destroyed their cause. Let all your efforts tend toward that end, because selfishness is the true scourge of society. Those in this life who want to approach moral perfection must uproot from their heart every sentiment of selfishness, for selfishness is incompatible with justice, love, and charity. It neutralizes all other qualities. This is their whole answer, and I wanted to bring the whole answer because there's a lot in that. First, they're saying that all evil derives from selfishness, and that if we look at all the vices, if we study all the vices, we will see that selfishness is at the bottom of them all. And they're saying that it doesn't matter how much we try to end all our vices if we do not destroy the cause, the root, as they say, which is selfishness, we will be continuing to fail in this task. They even say that selfishness is incompatible with justice, with love, and with charity, and that selfishness neutralizes all other qualities. This is no light statement by any means whatsoever. Yet it is very important, I think, for us to understand how selfishness impacts us all, and how important it is for us to understand this battle, this struggle that we have against selfishness, against these quote-unquote evil tendencies that we all have in our hearts. Selfishness is the plague of humanity in the sense that a lot, if not much, of the suffering that we see in our world is born from selfishness. If we think about conflicts between people, about social injustices, about exploitation, about indifference to the suffering of others, we will see selfishness, because when everyone thinks only of themselves, the collective balance is broken. But selfishness extends beyond just simply thinking about oneself. It is placing one's own interests above the well-being of others, which I think is something that is done consistently and habitually. And it can also appear in attitudes such as always wanting to be right, prioritizing one's own comfort above all else, ignoring the needs of others, or acting without considering the impact on other people. We learn through Spiritism that selfishness is natural in the early stages of spiritual evolution, but it must be overcome as the spirit progresses. Of course, we are still very much closer to the primitive state than we are from an angelical state, from a state of a purified spirit. Therefore, we're still very much guided by pride and selfishness, the two scourges of our time. But it doesn't mean that we cannot or should not fight selfishness. Quite the opposite. That means that we must battle it every day in this quest, in this journey of our spirit as it progresses. My dear friends, if we observe modern society, we can see how selfishness still influences many human decisions. It can appear in the relentless pursuit of power, in economic exploitations, in indifference towards poverty, in aggression with relationships. But it also appears in much simpler situations in everyday life that oftentimes I think we don't even realize. So let us bring this reflection into real life, because overcoming selfishness is not only theory, it is daily practice, my dear friends. So first, I wanted to mention within family relationships. At home, selfishness often appears in subtle ways. For example, when we want everything done our way, when we refuse to listen to others, when we react with irritation to small frustrations, when we want something for ourselves and not share it with anybody else. Fighting selfishness in this context, this family context, means learning to listen, respecting differences, and yielding when necessary to. Because as we have talked extensively in this podcast before about family, especially in the episode, The School of Soul, the family is one of the greatest fields of spiritual learning. We also see selfishness in the workplace. It can also appear in professional life. For example, competing unfairly, taking credit for the work of others, acting only for personal advantage. Perhaps this last one is the most obvious one. Overcoming selfishness at work means acting with honesty, recognizing the merit of others, collaborating instead of engaging in destructive competition, because, as we know, small attitudes produce great changes. We can also see in social interactions. How often do we see arguments on social media or even in everyday conversations that arise from pride and selfishness, the two scourges of our time? Because each person wants to prove their right, to win the argument, or to impose their view. The struggle against selfishness invites a different posture, invites a dialogue with respect, acceptance of differences, and humility in listening. We can also see selfishness in the indifference toward suffering. And I think this is one of the clearest signs of selfishness, this indifference. Passing by someone who is suffering and thinking, well, this is not my problem. Spiritism reminds us that we are all brothers and sisters, that the suffering of others concerns us too. To fight selfishness is to develop empathy. This battle against selfishness is a daily battle, because it is important to understand that no one conquers selfishness all at once. No, it is a gradual process, because all of us still have selfish tendencies, but every effort that we make in fighting the selfish tendency counts. Every small inner victory, my dear friends, represents real progress. So how can we combat selfishness in daily life? Well, here are some simple practices to help greatly. Asking more often, how can I help? Developing the habit of gratitude, acknowledging our own mistakes, practicing generosity, valuing the common good. These attitudes slowly transform the way that we live. Importantly as well, we have the answer on how to fight selfishness. Charity. Charity is the fundamental virtue capable of combating selfishness. And charity here does not mean only material help. Charity also includes understanding, patience, indulgence, respect, solidarity. It means stepping out of the center of ourselves and recognizing the value of others too. As we learn in the Gospel according to Spiritism, outside charity there is no salvation. And we've already done an episode on charity. But this means that spiritual progress depends on the development of love for others. The more we cultivate charity, the more we contribute to the collective good, the more inner peace we feel, and the less space selfishness finds. And remember, a better world begins within us. Often we wish for a more just world, but Spiritism invites us to begin with ourselves. Every person who reduces selfishness improves their relationship, contributes to a more fraternal society, and can even inspire others too. The transformation of the world begins with the transformation of the individual. My dear friends, the struggle or the battle against selfishness is one of the greatest battles of our spiritual life. It is not a struggle against others. It is a struggle within ourselves. Every gesture of generosity, every act of understanding, every decision to do good represents a victory in this journey. So may we, day by day, expand charity, reduce selfishness, and build a more fraternal life. Because, as Spiritism teaches, the true progress of the Spirit happens when we learn to love. What a blessing that we end yet another episode of the Spiritist Companion Podcast. This time episode number 41 about the battle against selfishness. Thank you so much once again for being here with me today. I hope this reflection was helpful. And if it was helpful, even just a little, please share it with someone else who is also seeking spiritual growth, who is also seeking to battle selfishness. We will meet again in the next episode, next Monday. And until then, remain firm in goodness, cultivate charity, and keep walking one step at a time under the light of Spiritism. With fraternal love, your Spiritist Companion.